Welcome, everyone, to another Virtual World Society Fireside Chat. We are so thrilled to have you here. My name is Laurel Van Fossen. I am the Director of Educators in VR, and we produce this event for the Virtual World Society, and I am so absolutely thrilled to have Dr. Tom Furness here with his amazing guest host, Anne-Marie Enns, and I'm going to let Tom introduce her, but I'm going to introduce Tom. He's known as the grandfather of, he loves this when I do this, it's a stroke his ego. I know, we love him. He is the co-founder of the Virtual World Society. He is also the grandfather of VR. For those of you who are here in a VR headset, you wouldn't have this on your face unless he did the things he needed to do decades ago that made all the difference. And the work that he and the Virtual World Society is doing to carry on the legacy of helping organizations, schools, businesses, archives, historical centers, everything you can possibly imagine to really come together and understand the power of virtual reality, of XR, of emerging technology, of AI, as you're going to hear about now, to change lives and really drive this forward. He's had the vision for all these years, and now you get to learn about this. So we host these once a month, and including a bunch of other events in VR. So now I'm going to turn over to the amazing Dr. Tom Furness.
Oh, Laurel, thank you. You do stroke me. I'm uplifted by that, you know. Yeah, this counterbalances what my wife does, you know. So she's probably hearing me in the background.
I love it.
So thanks again, and thanks for all that you do and your team and helping us do this event. And we're delighted today to have with us an amazing person, and I've gotten to know her a little bit better. Yesterday we had a great time together. Here she is, Anne-Marie Enns. Wonderful to have you with us, and she has an amazing background, and I'm pretty much going to ask her questions and let her tell her story. But she will have a question for you as she goes along. So be prepared to be put on the spot a little bit as well. This is being recorded, and what we found is many people actually attend this event even virtually at later times. So it's not that you just have this cast of a few here. You have cast of thousands, you know, that are going to be listening to this as we go along. So, Anne-Marie, tell us a little bit about where were you born and what was your early childhood like?
Well, welcome everyone. I'm so happy to be here. Thank you, Tom. I was born in Leamington, Ontario, in Canada, which is the tomato capital of Canada, where all of your Heinz ketchup was made until a few years ago. So I had a great childhood, lots of farms, great little small town. All of my relatives lived there. And I just had a great childhood playing outside and, you know, being in nature and just loving it before the days of technology and all of that took over. So, you know, played in the dirt, made mud pies, picked carrots, and, you know, just really at one with that. Spent a lot of time with my grandparents. And I lived there until I was in the end of grade 8 when my dad, who worked for Heinz, got a job transfer, and then I moved to England to go to high school for a couple of years. So it was a good childhood. I don't have any complaints whatsoever.
So you went to high school in England. Whereabouts in England?
They did, yeah. So my dad did a job transfer, so he ended up going to an international school. It was just outside of London. We had about 200 kids in our high school. I think I was the only Canadian, my sister and I. And then there were kids from all over the world. So I was there for 4 years. It was amazing. I did like an advanced art course there, and every weekend was spent going into London, and we went to art galleries. I went to amazing concerts, which at that time were like £5 to go to, not like $300 now. So it was just, it was such an eye-opening experience. It was the first time I had ever traveled, because growing up in a small town in Ontario, you know, we didn't have a ton of money, so we didn't really do that much outside of there. But once we moved to England, we had the chance to travel and go to a lot of great European cities with my family. With school, we went to Paris on an economics field trip. I just thought it was in heaven. So it was quite an experience. And then when I was graduated from high school, I came back to Toronto because my sister was there, and went to university there, and that's where I'm living now, with a couple of years in between.
So in those couple of years in between, you came over to this side of the country, or?
I did, yeah. So I lived in Toronto till about 14 years ago, and then I had my son when I was 35, and so we moved when he was about a year and a half old. We moved out to Vancouver, British Columbia, and that's when I started to do tech events. But I loved living in BC. I really missed it. I'm back in Toronto now because of some health conditions reasons, but I loved it there. I loved being able to go after work and just step into a ocean. And I loved the hiking and the trees, and it was just so beautiful. I highly recommend, if you haven't been out west in Canada, that you go, because it's probably one of the most spectacular places in the world.
Well, fortunately, I can look out my window here as we did yesterday, and
Yes.
And I'm here on the west coast of Vancouver Island at the moment.
I
sort
love
of
it.
like, yeah, sort of like an honorary Canadian, but they haven't told me what the initiation is, so I'm not sure what I have to do.
It's syrup. It has something to do with syrup and bacon, I'm sure, and hockey.
I'm
Hockey
sure
stats.
it does.
I would fail that part, but
Hockey stats. Yeah. Okay. Well, now you as growing up, what were your hobbies? What did you like to do? I mean, you made mud pies and picked carrots, but
I did.
What were your hobbies? Yeah.
I really, when I was younger, I was really into swimming, anything to do with water. Swimming, took lifeguarding courses, graduated though so early that I wasn't actually legally old enough to be a lifeguard, because I think I just plowed through those until I was 12. Then I took diving, diving, board diving, so high board and all of that lessons. And then when I moved to the UK, I really got into art, doing acrylic painting, sculpture, all of that. And I was super passionate about anything to do with art. I have no musical ability, so that was never a talent for me. But yeah, I mean, I love reading. Now, I'm like, and back then, like, I loved gardening. I loved anything to do with nature. So yeah, like that, I did a lot of writing and that sort of thing. So really, really more an artistic kid than a technical kid.
Well, in the middle of all this, though, somehow you got interested in events. I mean, you went when you went to school, went to university. That's what you wanted to concentrate in. How did that happen? How did you make the transition from being an arty type person to planning things, planning big events?
Well, I mean, one of the things I always loved is I was always ridiculously social. And so I loved planning events for my friends. I was on student council. I planned our prom. I did all of that. I was telling Tom yesterday, I used to get called down to the principal's office because I was always a bit too social, maybe, in class. And so I was saying that all of the things that were written on my report card that were seen as negative are all exactly the skills I need in my job right now. So it's kind of funny that I was, for talking too much, for, being too creative, for living in my own head. And now, that's what I still do. And I'm successful at it, but I really loved that. And so I went to Ryerson University in Toronto, and I took a degree in hospitality and tourism, because I didn't really actually know what event planning was, but I was like, hospitality, that sounds like my jam. I did a degree in sustainable tourism because it kind of combined everything that I loved. And then in my last year, I had this teacher that was absolutely amazing. He was like a mentor. I think he just turned 100. Him and I are still friends on Facebook. He's still engaging with all of our classmates, which is amazing. Duff Shaw, I love you. You're awesome. And I did event planning courses with him, and I just fell in love, and I went, this is what I want to do. And so like literally the day after I graduated, I just started a job doing meeting planning, incentive travel. And so I just loved it. And then I switched into doing not-for-profit events for a long time. So doing gala fundraisers, which is still a passion of mine, doing fundraising and anything for charity. And then I kind of just went into tech events about 10 years ago or so when I moved to Vancouver.
Wow. So let's put this on a hold for a minute and go back.
Sure.
So you mentioned that you have a son,
I do.
And that you were interested in athletics, and now he is.
Yes.
In the tennis. Tell us about that.
So my son's 13. He just turned 13 in May, and he is a wonderful tennis player. He's on the Tennis Canada team for kids that are under the age of 14. Just competed at nationals, did really well. So he has traveled around the world with it. He went to a tennis academy in Spain. I have no idea where he gets it from. His dad was a cyclist. I like swimming, but I'm certainly not the most athletic person, but he just loves it. And he's an intelligent kid. He's a smart player and really, really dedicated. He trains 3 hours a day. We homeschool him. It's all driven by him, and his dedication to that and his fitness is just incredible. Like I'm just a huge fan of his and admirer of his work ethic. Anybody could learn something from that kid. So he's amazing.
Well, it's clear that that you've put a lot of heart into your family and into
Yes.
to your work. But let's talk about hearts for a minute.
Yes.
Tell us about your heart.
Well, I have a brand new heart. I had a heart transplant on Christmas Eve of 2023 after years of living with heart failure. I had atrial fib, and I was born with cardiomyopathy, which is a genetic disease that my dad had. And when he was diagnosed with it, they sent my sister and I to get tested, and I had it and she didn't. So I lived with it for a number of years. And in the last 5 years, I was really sick, like really, really ill with heart failure, to the point where they didn't think I was going to make it last year. So I got all of the testing done for a heart transplant in Vancouver, and then decided to move back to Toronto in November because I just really wanted to be with my family. My sister and my mom are here, and my niece and nephew, and so we moved back here in November. I finished my workup for my heart transplant on December 22nd. I got put on the transplant list. They said, "We don't think you're going to make it. Go home for Christmas, spend time with your family, and then come back and you'll have to wait in the hospital for a heart." And that was December 22nd. And then they said, if we can find a heart, I have a rare blood type. I had high antibodies, which lots of women do if they've had a child. And then literally 18 hours later, they called on 8:30 on Saturday morning when my son was at tennis, my husband was getting our car tire fixed, and said, "We have a heart for you." And I was like, I have no idea what you even just said. It was 18 hours later. And they said, "We are giving you a heart on Christmas Eve." And so I went in and I got my new heart. And yeah, it was like totally, if you believe in Christmas miracles, we had a Christmas miracle in our family. And now it's 9 months since 9 months on the 24th, and I'm feeling great. Lots of little bumps in the road on the way, but I'm doing really well, and I feel better than I have in years. So yeah, I mean, new heart is driving me just to do things I want to do. It's a whole new outlook on life. It's amazing. So yes.
Wow, and that's what a story.
Thank you.
Now, you're using this heart to do some amazing things. Let's go to the next slide. This Mission Impact Academy that you're currently working in. Tell us a little bit about it, and what you've just had a recent event.
We did.
is a global summit, global AI summit. Why don't you tell us a little about the evolution of where you've gone with these kind of event plans and the culmination here of what happened last week?
Sure thing. So MIA AI, we were formerly known as Mission Impact Academy. We are a upskilling platform targeted towards non-technical women, although we get a lot of technical women as our members. And what we do is provide continuous upskilling for women in a community-based platform in anything to do with AI. So no matter what level you're at, we do introduction to prompting. We talk a lot about ethics and responsibility. We do training on building ethical frameworks, building business plans, anything to do with AI, we're producing it. And it really started as a free community, bringing women together in a safe space to learn. So I started out on the board of Mission Impact Academy, meeting our co-founders, Tarja and Yana, and then kind of fell in love with it, and then got offered a job because they wanted to start doing virtual events and bringing these lessons and these trainings globally, because we had a community of women from 65 countries around the world. And so I was brought on to do that. So we've done a global summit last spring. We just did this one last week, which we had the pleasure of having a few speakers from Virtual World Society join us. But we really are about upskilling and providing women and allies with upskilling opportunities. And we're partnering with great speakers from around the globe. We do a combination of live learning within the membership, on-demand courses. We have office hours where people can come and learn and ask questions. And then we really have a really strong, active community where people are mentoring up and mentoring down. We've got people that are like the head of trends at Nokia, down to a mother of 8 from Ecuador who's looking to go back into the workforce. And I think the oldest woman in our membership is 84. Which is amazing. And so we're really all about that. And so the Global Summit is our 2-day culmination of really letting people know what we're doing and bringing together voices that are strong in AI to talk about what needs to be done, how to apply these ethics and responsibility to AI, how to apply it to your business, and what you need to do to stay informed within the world of AI.
Wow. Well, one of the things that impresses me with what you're doing, and especially in your conferences, is you're not just sitting around talking about things. You're actually doing. And
Yes.
and I think it's what's rises out of the conference actually comes from the work that you're doing. And
Yes.
what you're learning. So it's to me, that's a really gratifying that there's substance behind the conference, like the educators in VR and the activities that are going underneath these conferences. Some conferences are just to bring people together to chat, which is fine.
Yes.
For exchanging information. But now this is actually connected to something that is a global activity in the Global AI Summit. How many participants did you have in the summit this year?
We had about 400 last week, which was great. And then about, I think, 30 countries represented. And then, our speakers, like you were saying, we've got amazing partners at MIA. One of our partners is we just partnered with the Chopra Foundation. So really looking at, the human side. And the intention behind using technology. So we had their CEO speak. Deepak Chopra did an opening for us. And then we're also working with organizations like Sustainable IT. So members of our team this week are in New York at the UN summit there for climate.
Right.
And so it's amazing where our team is and what we're working on. Like you said, the Global Summit's just bringing those voices together, but there's a lot of amazing projects we're doing with great partners.
You have some amazing goals as well. You want to reach 1 million women and 100,000 jobs. And these more aligned with the Sustainable Development Goals of the United Nations. Tell me more about that.
Yeah, so we're looking to provide upskilling opportunities for 1 million women and allies by 2030. We're working to, really help drive women and allies to get job opportunities, and we're doing it in a sustainable global perspective. And so, we've been working with like the Nigerian Chamber of Commerce and UN Women and Davos Women to really make sure that we're doing this in a sustainable, accessible way. And so we're only a year old. We're a scrappy startup of, I think there's 7 women in our team right now. And so we're really looking to provide those opportunities. The goal ultimately would be to have enough partnership and sponsorship where we can just offer our membership for free. Like that would be the wonderful thing that we can do. And that's what we're striving to get the funding for, so that we can actually just provide these skills to as many women as possible.
So what do you see are the main trajectories to getting to 1 million women and 100,000 jobs, maybe new jobs? What is the pathway to that? What is the key to unlock all of that, do you believe?
I mean, my firm belief is that it's all about community, and it's all about partnerships, and it's all about relationships. So, you can't do it alone. Nobody can do it alone. We're not even pretending that we know how to do that by ourselves. But we are making incredible partnerships. We're making our membership as accessible as it can be to anybody and everybody that wants to be involved. And we're really listening. MIA is all about community. In the picture that you can see in the slide, that we were at Can Diversity and onboarded a huge amount of memberships from there. Just driving those messages forward, working with both corporate partners and community partners to bring that to test, and then looking at, granting opportunities so that we can have the funding to bring this to as many people as possible. But also we're using it as a platform to promote new jobs and promote people to think about hiring women, giving women voices. But again, it all goes back to community. It all goes back to relationships.
Wow. Okay. So let's talk about AI a little bit.
Sure.
Now, this is certainly, the focus is of course, AI is a tool to not only for women, but for all people. But what was the focus that you're trying to make with the upskilling? What kind of skills do you think are needed to take advantages, and where do you see it leading? Where do you see all of this now practical use of AI taking place?
Well, we're seeing, we always talk about AI as a tool and as a companion to getting your career advancement, or, getting into any industry. People, as everyone always says, they're scared that AI will take their jobs. And we're always like, it's not going to take your job over, but people that know how to use AI will definitely have an advantage over you. It goes down back to the basics of, it used to be you needed to know Excel, and people would test you on your knowledge of Excel in a job. AI is going to be kind of that new tool. So we're really looking at, prompting as a skill and knowing how to ask the right questions, building frameworks for your business, and looking at, how can we use AI as a companion tool. I use Perplexity every day in my job to help me write emails, and to, I use Gamma to help myself prepare presentations. It's making those things a lot easier to do. But AI really, it's a movement where we can actually make a difference. And what we're always talking about is the ethics side of it, how to make it not discriminatory, how to reduce bias in it. And it's really one of those technologies from the ground up where we have a say. And so what we're trying to teach the people that are going through our program is, how to use it and how to use it wisely, but the human skills that also go along with it, because we firmly believe that the human-centric skills like research and compassion and empathy are really important to make AI a success in whatever that you're doing. It's, you can use it just as a tool to make your life a little easier and save some hours for sure, but you also need to really look at, how you're using it, how you're teaching it to other people, and how you can apply it for good. And that's one of the things that we talk about a lot at MIA.
Hmm. So we talked a little bit about Caitlin Krause. Caitlin
Yes.
yesterday and I know many of you know Caitlin. She just launched her new book called Digital Wellbeing. And
Mhm.
one of the things that she told me is that she was really proud of the fact that that this was every word was written by her. That she did
Yes.
not rely upon any tools to help her with
Hmm.
that. Um, I have mixed up feelings about that. We use the typewriters. We have our dishwashers. We have our things like that to free us, to give us more time to think. And when we think about AI, one of the big concerns, of course, is that it displaces a
Hmm.
lot of the current skills, and that indeed graphic artists are really concerned about where things are going to go
Yes.
with their field and other professions. And so, what do you see then is the impact of yes, there's a tool that we can use, but this tool is actually going to obsolete a bunch of things that have been done in the past. But then there's this middle ground of how does the tool and the tool user still remain authentic?
Hmm. Well, I think that's the biggest question and the most important thing. I believe that, yeah, it's funny because my son who's homeschooled, I said, he's writing an essay the other day and I was like, hey, why don't we learn how to use AI to kind of, rework your essay and make it a little bit better? He's like, but mom, that's cheating. And I was like, okay, I didn't say to hand it into your teacher that way. I said, why don't we just look at different ways and see what it does? Because I wanted him to think about it and I wanted him to learn how to use it responsibly. And I love that he asked me if it was cheating and just thought about that right away. So I have a little bit of faith in the younger generation for that. But I really think that if I was an artist, I would be extremely concerned about it. I think that that's especially one of the areas where there's such a gray area. There's a lot of IP issues. They're in Lionsgate Studio, which is a movie studio, it said that they were going to write all of their next films using AI, which is terrifying. It's cool in one way, but it's like that's a whole industry that will be out of business. That's terrifying. But with any progression, there are those fears that come along, and so I just think that people need to look at it as a tool, but that human side of doing research, of knowing what you're talking about, of reading an actual book, of actually doing the skills of writing, those are things that we really, really need to emphasize to people that shouldn't be lost. But there is also the argument where, they say when this technology or any technology takes over, that the world's going to move more into a leisure society or a society that's based more on wellness and connection because these things will be done for us. I like that version of it, but I don't know if that's the version we'll necessarily go to. But the idea of that makes me a little bit happier. But but we get the doom and gloom of it. It would be great to be like the Jetsons, but then, I could become, a meditation teacher, not be worrying about my bills, So there's both sides of it. And I think that it depends who you talk to, but we're in this room all in tech. We all are comfortable with tech. We all understand, like being in VR and AR for years, like the potential of it, of what it's not scary because we get it. So I think as people understand it more, but the regulations and those things around it that are being done by people that don't get it is where it's frightening and what I'm worried about for it.
Yeah, Anne-Marie, that's the truth. Tom, how about time to talk to our audience? You had a question for us?
Well, yes, yeah.
Maria?
I think Anne-Marie might have a question to ask the audience.
I do. Let me just pull it up here. So as we were just chatting about, I would love to hear from the audience, if you're using AI or even thinking about AI, what's the role that human creativity and empathy and critical thinking will play in it? And how are you putting that into place when you're thinking about AI and technology and ethics? I would love to hear from the audience about
All right. P. Tom, you want to pitch it? Do you have something to say? Oh, we got to make sure our audio is turned on. Hold on a second. All right, we're trying to get that. Hang on a second. Having a little bit of technical issues that have been hitting us lately, so hold on just a second, and we're going to unmute everybody. Engage is getting ready for a major update tomorrow, and so we're having a little bit of technical stuff in behind the scenes. All right, now you can unmute. Go for it.
Yeah, sorry. Actually, it was mostly that my controller is misregistered, so I'm not actually raising my hand, but I do have thoughts. I do have thoughts. So on this,
the thoughts anyway. Okay, I saw you
and
waving.
especially Tom, as you were putting it, maintaining the authenticity of the tool versus the tool user. I think we have to decide where's the value. Is it in the ingenuity and the cultivation and curation of thinking and how to attach that to our own values, or is it in the expressive mechanics of preparing those ideas for transmission to other people, or for visualization, or for actualizing it? And I think it's on the ingenuity that brings those things together, which is the human factor. So I think artists have always used emerging technologies. Painters used mirrors and lights to transform their ability to see color in a clear way and to capture details they couldn't have otherwise. Musicians have always created new instruments. Any artist these days is using digital tools and techniques that makes it possible to undo a brush stroke, which is something that the masters would have scoffed at, but also jumped right on board with.
Yeah.
Right. So we've already jumped over this hoop many, many times of technology as enabling force multiplication of human effort. I think this is just moving it into a higher conceptual realm than it's been, instead of just a purely practical. But I think the same factors still apply.
Cool. Anne-Marie?
I couldn't agree. I couldn't agree more with that. I think that, it's like anything. If you're using it with good intention, and if you're using it for something personal, like, go for it. I think, there's so much gray area when people are talking about IP and stealing art and doing that. But in terms of using it as a creation tool for yourself, I think it's a great way to do things. But again, you have to have respect of those around you and use it ethically, just like anything, Yeah,
I offer an analogy. The other day I asked AI for a word for something I just couldn't come up with, and I suddenly realized that I'd used it the same way I would a thesaurus, but I would not have thought to myself, gee, did I really write that, or did the AI write that? And it really is the same thing.
It is. And
it is.
I will tell you,
yeah, go ahead. Sorry.
Oh, I was just going to confirm with her is that my husband, I call, Tom, you have competition now, but I call Perplexity my boyfriend, and my husband is so thrilled because I don't nag him during the day, go, what is it called when there's that thing that does the, and he goes, yes, it's this. And I'm like, now I ask AI. And I don't think it's a tool. It's just a thesaurus, a tool.
Well, we used to go to the library. I'm in my late 40s, like when we were in school, we went to the library to look things up. And then we were like, ooh, the internet, like, what's this for? Had to go through that whole learning curve with it. And now AI is that next level of that source of it. I use it all the time to research things, or if I'm trying to, like, I work by myself all day long in my house because of my heart thing. I'm immunosuppressed, so I'm way more antisocial than I used to be. But I'm like, I use it to kind of bounce ideas off of. Like, I don't have it write my things for me, but I'm like, hey, I'm doing a sponsor deck for this client. So how could I organize this? What are companies in the world that are sponsoring these things? So instead of me going to a million websites looking at AI events, I can say, hey, what are the top AI events and who are the top people that are sponsoring them? And I get it in 2 seconds, which is great. And then I have a conversation going, okay, so if I'm writing a deck, like, what are these companies working on and what are they looking for? And I can have that conversation with Perplexity.
I love that. Steph, you have more to add?
Well, I was just going to add that teachers now are going to have to deal with kids that don't know how to wait for that information any longer. I mean, they don't even need to use an index to look through something in a book any longer because the AI would do it for them. So the fact that they will not be patient when it comes to give me the answer might be a problem in future for teachers to be aware of.
Very true.
Yeah.
Very true. Yeah, that's beautiful. And thank you, Steph. And I want to give an example that is in line with a lot of this is that, like you, my husband's been undergoing some health issues, and when he one of his employees that he works with introduced him to Suno AI, which will help you write songs and music. Have you played with that, Anne-Marie?
I haven't. No.
Oh,
I have.
you can put in words. Yeah, it's really fun, and you can put in your own words. You know, the AI generate words, and then you can pick the type of music and everything. And what has happened is that he's now created, I don't know, 30, 40, 50 songs, educational, not educational, fun, silly, stupid, wonderful stuff. But what has happened is that he's reconnected back to his childhood days when he had the guitar sitting up in the upstairs corner bedroom over the garage away from the family, and he could rock out and pretend to be a rock star. He could write his own music, and he could play with music in a way that lifted his spirit. It lifts his heart. And when I told this to a professional artist who got quite upset that their job was at risk. And after we talked for a little while, he realized his job is not at risk, because that human-generated creativity is still going to be embraced. You know, I mean, I'm sorry, Gutenberg did not put artists out of business. It did not put writers out of business. Those that can use it, great, but those who master the art form are always going to have a place in our world, and we're going to respect them. We should respect them. That's what I should say. Respect them, support them, encourage them. But for somebody who's not in the business of selling it, they don't want to compete with other artists, that's a magical place to have creative expression that soothes the soul, just like you mentioned.
And, you know, you have to go back to, like, you still have to have a knowledge base of things that are going on in the world to make these things work. Like, if you're in Midjourney and you're making an image, you can't just say, oh, I'd love a street scene like this. Like, you want to be like, I'd love a street scene that's reflective of this type of movie, or this, you know, like this architect style, or a Frank Gehry house, or, you know, with a Monet touch. Like, you need to know what you're talking about to prompt it properly. And you need to have education behind that. You need to have world experience behind that. You need to go to an art gallery. You need to read a book. You need to have interests and passions. And, you know, that's what makes it interesting to play with. And it makes it interesting. It gives you better results, but you still have to have that human, always back to the human component around it. Like, that's imperative.
Absolutely. All right. We have just another minute for a quick comment or question from anyone before we continue on. Okay, back to you, Tom.
Okay, so as we look to the future of where we are merging virtual reality, AI, the metaverse, these pieces that we talk about, where we have the whole world at our fingertips. But we also have, with that with that whole access to that whole world, we have a companion that can help us search it or use it effectively. And the pathway to the brain, bandwidth to the brain that is provided by virtual reality, where we're awakening spatial memory and those kinds of things. We have the combination of these things. So the enormous power that we have in our hands now, where do you see is the natural direction or trajectory we should be taking in using this enormous power that we have? I know that's an ambiguous question, but just what are your thoughts?
Well, I mean, to me personally, the most important thing is that, you know, you need to use these tools to drive things for good and to make a change. And so one of the things that we talk about a lot is, you know, bias and making sure that everyone's included in what's going on and everyone's recognized. And I know, like, you know, in VR for years, you know, the headsets weren't made for every culture or hair type, or, you know, it wasn't fitting. And there's so many different things for so many people that have accessibility issues. But I think that anything with these tools, you know, there's a lot of programs coming out now and a lot of amazing people that are working on working on programming that is getting rid of those bias in AI and getting rid of, discrimination and getting rid of that, or helping to bridge that gap. It's not getting rid of it because that's a whole nother conversation. But I think that any of these tools, we need to use them for good. We need to use them to make change. I think it's, the practical enterprise applications of all of these things are wonderful. But I think that for me personally, I would love to see that we can do it through storytelling, through community, through changes. So I have a friend I just met that created a program that recognizes bias in resumes in HR companies, and it automatically gets rid of that. So the hiring is more equal. So, there's things that it can be used really for good. And I think that it opens up those conversations, and those are things we need to have. And that's where I would love to see all of these technologies going, is having that community, that conversation, and really using these tools well to open that up and have that be a reality for us.
So maybe we can ask if there are any other questions that the audience has before we get to the point where you give the final challenges to the group. So are there any other questions that you might have for Anne-Marie?
Anyone have any more questions?
I'll go ahead and ask a question to get it started.
Okay, if you don't, I do. Go for it, Tom.
Okay, well, one of the things that I've felt strongly about, not only with AI now, but with virtual reality, and one of the in the early days when I was working on this technology and starting in the mid 60s, I started basically in my job, I was trying to figure out how in the world you get bandwidth to and from the brain of a pilot in a fighter airplane. And I was flying in fighters, testing equipment, and it was clear that we had this overwhelming amount of information, and you had to make decisions really fast. And what we really needed to do is have R2-D2 with us, to help us make those decisions. But what happened in the process of doing this work to try to solve problems is that basically we invented what we know today as virtual reality. And one of the things we found about virtual reality was it opened up something in our minds that we never really were using or awakening. Certainly, one of the things we did have is imagination. And when we read a book, our imagination turns on. And we create this amazing world in our heads. Now, the world that I create, when I read a book, you and I read the same book. You will create a different world than I will create. But there is an essence in that creation that is part of our imagination that is important to have that ability to imagine, to see these kind of things in our head. But what happens then when we have virtual reality and you and I can share in a story where we see the same thing? Then the question is, does that really take away imagination, or does it enhance imagination? So I'll leave that with you, that question with you to ponder. What do you think?
I'm going to ponder that one.
And let me add a little more to that. And this back to what Tom was talking about too, is it really about the way we use our imagination to create, or is it a way that we use what we've created to relate to other people? And these are two different things. And in terms of the method, what the process is for invention or creation versus delivery or dissemination. But what I have found is that stimulation can come from having experiences that are profound, that awaken things within us. And from that, we can use that as a spur to creativity. And it's not, and so therefore, as a tool, some of these things can help us come up with these ideas. Not that they come up with the ideas, but they can help us come up with the ideas. And so this goes back to, how do you communicate those ideas? If I, for example, had created something, an image in my mind, and I wanted to relate it to you, all I have now is words. Well, all I had before was words to do that, like in a book. But what if there were more going on with my words? What if when the way I expressed my words, there was something else? There were pictures that occurred. There were sentiments, emotions that I were able to express. And you could see my emotions. You could see the pictures I had in my head. And you could say, oh, yes, now I get it. Well, this is the way I thought about it.
Yes.
And then you tell me the way you thought about it. And you have your pictures, your emotions. And I say, wow, I never did think about it from that perspective. And what that does now is enlarge our comprehension of different perspectives that help us, that the machine couldn't do by itself, but a machine with another human could do together with me.
Yeah.
That's sort of.
I love that because when you go into VR, it's interesting because I was doing there was a VR film festival in Vancouver, and I was one of the judges, and some of them were intense and some of them, just didn't resonate with me. But there was this one that I still think about it because the way that they express themselves in VR, I don't think if I would have read it or seen it in a movie, if I wasn't in a headset, I don't think it would have stayed with me nearly as much. But however they did it was just amazing. And like you're saying, people respond to different things and people learn in different ways and people are creative in different ways. Like, for example, my husband's in film, loves watching movies. He can watch movies day and night. I'm not this huge film buff. Like, I love to read a book and he's the total opposite to me. But once in a while, we'll watch something together that invokes that emotion. And I think that that's true with any of these tools. I think you hit the nail on the head where it's the human combined with the technology that really makes the difference. It's not one or the other. But I just remember back in the day writing sponsor decks for events that I was producing, and it always started with imagine this, and I would have to write and describe how I saw the room and what I thought it would be, and all of that, because this is even before internet. And so it was, I had to use my words wisely to get my clients to buy my services. But if I could do that now and use like Midjourney or some other program to design the visual of what I want, which is what I now do for my potential sponsors, it makes a world of difference to be able to put my vision into that technology and get the output going. Yeah, that's what I want my event to look like. Like, that's cool. And it makes my job so much easier to portray that to my clients. And so I love that idea, but it is that combo, and you have to find the right technology that works for you and your imagination. There's people that are building amazing VR worlds. I would have no idea how to do that, but they're masterminds to me because I'm like, wow, what an amazing thing that you're building here.
Well, now this speaks of what you're really trying to do at the MIA AI, right? I mean,
Yes.
That's what you're really trying to do is acquaint people, focus on women certainly, about the great power of these tools to help them. And so once they have those tools, they are empowered, because that's what the competition is going to have, and
Yes.
if we think about it in that way, in terms of competition. Now, as we're closing, you've had a lot of experiences in your life, all the way from heart transplant to rejoicing with your son and his tennis success, and
Yes.
and doing this summit thing. What would you consider? It doesn't have to be the highlight, but a highlight in your life that you found that you would like to leave with the people who are here and with the people who will watch this later.
A highlight? Can I change that a little bit into a new perspective as opposed to a
New
highlight?
perspective.
Is that
Sure,
okay?
Sure, that's fine.
I just, going through my whole transplant process, just really opened my eyes up to the fact that how you live your life every day and who you engage with, and what you put out into the world, whether it's with work or your family or your friends. Like, it's really important to keep it true to your heart. And so, I love the work that I do. I love connecting good people. I love seeing people, build beautiful relationships. The team at MIA has been nothing but exceptional during this whole process. But I think it's just, my highlight is watching my son compete this year, because I couldn't go last year and I didn't think I'd ever go again. So that's, definitely my personal highlight. But it's so important to take passion and love and inspiration into everything that you do. And so those are my parting words, because I live my life like that now, and I honestly enjoy every day as a result, whether I'm working and doing a giant event that's normally stressful, but when you do something that you put passion into, it doesn't seem like work. So those are my parting words.
Wow. Thanks, Anne-Marie. Thank
You're
you
welcome.
for those. And let's thank Anne-Marie for the time she spent with us,
Yay!
and this has been wonderful.
Thank you all
and
for coming.
love your heart.
Thank you.
We have a
Yes,
couple
yes,
of announcements before we kiss each
Yes,
other
we do.
goodbye. Just coming up, following Anne-Marie, we have some occasions that we like to advertise. The Augmented World Expo is one in EU is coming up October 29th and 30th, as you see here. And then there was one earlier in Asia. We will have several members of the Virtual World Society will be attending that conference. And it's basically trying to do in Europe and in Asia what was done here in the U.S. The next U.S. one will also be in Long Beach, as it was this year. And but put that on your calendar, because it's an amazing experience. We have upcoming next time, and in October, our Fireside Chat is Alvin Grayland. Alvin is on the board of the Virtual World Society and is the president of HTC Vive in China. He is actually one of my students, former students at the University of Washington. And so he has an upcoming new role that is unfolding at the Virtual World Society. And what I would like to do is, I did have him on before when he was talking about his new book about AI, and he and Louis Rosenberg. But I want to now talk to him about the vision he sees for the Virtual World Society in the confluence of all of these things that we've talked about today and beyond. And hopefully you'll be able to attend that as well on October the 24th. And certainly, Anne-Marie, you're welcome to be there too and enjoy that.
Love it.
We have another activity we have in the Virtual World Society is the podcast. Maxwell McGee is an amazing young man who is I don't know, he's just a force of nature in terms of doing interviews. And be sure to look up the podcasts at the Virtual World Society called the Next Broadcast, and hear what other people around the world have to say about what we're doing in this world with the technology. And then finally, and we'd like for everyone to join the Virtual World Society. If you're not a member, please join. And in that, join with us in doing projects like with Anne-Marie and the MIAI, and with Educators in VR, the Girls STEAM Institute, the Make-A-Wish Foundation, and then United Nations activities, all these things that we're trying to do to lift humanity. So with that, thank you again for coming. Anne-Marie, maybe you can hang around for a few minutes if people want to come up and chat with you.
Of course.
And I will need to depart for another meeting, I'm afraid.
That's right, we'll hang.
You hang, and
we'll
you'll hang,
here.
Angelina?
We'll be here.
Okay,
no,
great.
Yeah, we will hang here, not a problem. No, I just want to thank everyone. Again, my name is Laurel. I'm with the Educators in VR, which is partners with the Virtual World Society. And get ready for next month's event. It's going to be wonderful, as well as I do want to say that that as a partner with Virtual World Society, next month in October 2024, is our annual Educators in VR Cyberbullying Month, and we're going to have an entire month just filled with many representatives from Virtual World Society, and others are going to be sharing about how we deal to create an inclusive environment for everyone, but also how do we deal with disruption and cyberbullying and attacks and things that happen, and it's going to be really great fun. So look forward to that in October. So thank you, everyone. Thank you, Tom. Thank you, Anne-Marie. This is wonderful.
Thank you, Tom, Anne-Marie, Laurel, everyone.
Thank
See
you.
you guys
Thank
soon.
you. See you
Bye,
later.
guys. Thank you.
Goodbye.
Bye.
Bye.